Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make a really cute Doodly Father's Day card for the dad in your life. Let's just jump right into it. Okay, for tools in this video you're going to need, of course, a card. This is just watercolor paper that I cut into a random card-ish size and folded it. You can use pre-made cards, you can use watercolor paper, you can use any kind of like harder cardstock. It really doesn't matter what you use. Just a card cut into the general size, a ruler, a pencil, and then some fine liner black pens. I'm using Micron size 02 and 08, but if you don't have Micron pens, you can use something else. You'll see approximately like the size of the tip when we start working, and you can choose accordingly. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do a big bubble letter for the letters DAD, D-A-D. So basically, I'm just gonna give myself some rough guidelines here, really lightly in pencil. If you have a laser level, you could also use that for this. I have a whole video on my channel explaining that, but the goal basically with this is to write D-A-D and take up like the majority of the card. So give yourself some nice big guidelines, and then you're just gonna jump in and start roughing in the letters. When I'm doing a 3-letter word, I like to start in the middle. So I'm gonna just put my A roughly in the middle, doing the skeleton of it. And then I'm gonna make it really nice and bold. So giving it some weight on either side of that skeleton. Now, if you're not experienced with hand lettering, that's totally fine. Obviously I am, that's what I do and teach on this channel. So I'm just doing this pretty quickly, but you could also print off a font if you wanted and trace the big letters, just to make this step easier for yourself. So then once you have your letter kind of roughed in, you can clean it up so that you can really only see the outline of what you've drawn, and you can clean it up or do whatever you need to do. Just really, that's why we want to use really light pencil lines, because we're gonna erase all of them afterwards and go over it with a marker. So then I have my A. Now I'm gonna do my D's on either side of that. So again, just really light pencil lines, roughing this letter in. And you can take as much time as you need to here to get it to be what you want, but ideally you want like a good width of the letter so that you can fill in lots of little icons in there and they won't look squished. So just giving yourself lots of space, and feel free to pause the video, take as much time as you need here. Once I have that cleaned up, I'm actually gonna go over it with my bigger Micron pen so that I have the complete outline of my word dad. And just before we move on here, I want to mention I recognize that this is not perfectly centered in the card, and that's okay, because after we're done here, I can actually just trim my card. I find that easier than having to actually just go back and like erase all that and recenter it. So I'm just going to cut my card so that it looks centered at the end. So don't panic too much if that's you as well. So yeah, just going over your pencil lines and drawing in your letter. And these do not have to be perfect letters, because the goal is that they're going to be just like a really basic outline to be kind of outshined by the icons we're going to draw in. So don't worry if they're not perfect. In fact, the less perfect they are, in my opinion, the better, because that just makes this look a lot more handmade and not like a card you bought at Hallmark. So I've got the basic outline of my letters, and now I'm going to go ahead and erase all of that pencil. You could do that at the very end, but it's just bothering me, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. All right, and then we're going to start drawing in some icons. Now, I think that a lot of people tend to believe that when I am drawing doodles like this, that I just come up with these shapes and doodles in my head. That is not the case. I usually will make a list of the things that I think I should draw on this card. So for example, just take a scrap piece of paper here. And if I think about my dad likes golf a lot. He likes hockey. He likes like woodworking, so tools, woodworking. He has a mustache, a very specific mustache that I feel like would be the right icon. And then I just kind of think of some other like quirky stuff. So for example, my dad, whenever I say, what do you want for Christmas or what do you want for your birthday? He says socks and underwear, and he's joking. But I feel like that's like a classic thing he says. So I'll probably put in some socks and underwear icons. Yeah, and so just make a list of whatever you want to use as icons. And then I will go online and literally search icons. So I'll do like hockey icon, tool icon, golf icon, and then I start to look at some different ones that I like, and I can have those pulled up on my screen while I'm doing these. Because I'm not selling this card anywhere, it's not a copyright issue. I'm literally just using these as inspiration for my art that I'm going to give to my dad. I'm not worried about it, so you could do that too. And you don't have to copy them identically. You can use them as inspo. So look up, make a list of your items and then look up whatever icons and get some inspo for what we're going to fill these letters with. Okay, personally, I'm going to do this in pencil first just because I know that my doodling skills are not perfect, and they don't need to be perfect on here, but I think that it's going to be easier if I do this in pencil first and go over it with my pen. If you're in a rush, you can just jump right in with your pen, and no matter what you do, it's going to look cool because you can just fill in as many as you want, and each one itself is not going to be super noticeable. So if I think about what my dad liked, and maybe I want to start in this top corner with something golf related, and I'll do a golf cart. What we're doing here is we're trying to get our icons to fill in the letters as much as possible. So instead of drawing my golf cart centered in one of these pieces, I'm going to try and get it to touch as many edges as possible. And that's going to be easier said than done, so just do your best, but as close as you can to the edges as possible. So I'm literally just going to fill in this card with different icons, trying to get them touching the edges as much as possible and just filling in as much space as I can, repeating icons over and over again, filling it out. So I'm going to hyperlapse that. It's going to be a long and boring process with my pencil, and then we'll do it with pen afterwards. Okay, I'll just pause here quickly to show you what I've done so far. So you can see how my icons are pretty much touching the edges of my D as much as possible. For example, here I drew a hockey stick and the edge of the hockey stick is touching the edge of the D, so it really just looks like it kind of fits in. And then the rest of my icons, I'm trying to touch them to the sides. Now when I look at this, I notice there's a couple little blank spots. So here, for example, I might draw like half of a golf ball or something. And then when I put it in pen, I'll add some little dots to make that obviously a golf ball. This one's actually pretty filled in, so maybe I'll put another little half of a golf ball here. If you have some kind of element that you can repeat like that, like a golf ball or that little mustache, maybe I could add that in somewhere else if I need to fill in space, or these screws, you can repeat those as much as you need to really fill in the letter. So I'm just going to keep going through and doing that on the rest of my word. All right, then once I have all of my sketch in, I'm sure you can guess what the next step is, which is going to be to go over it with my black micron pen. That's why I'm using a smaller tip for this one, because the icons are pretty small. So now I'm going to go through and trace them over and kind of just perfect them because they're pretty sketchy at this point. So I'm just going to jump right in and do that. Okay, my icons are all in. I'm pretty happy with this. Now I'm going to go through with my eraser, and for this part it's important to know what kind of marker you're using. Micron pens are archival ink and they dry pretty quick, so I'm not super worried about my eraser smudging. That being said, my eraser has now run out. This is one of my favorite parts about a Palomino Blackwing pencil, is that you can replace the eraser. So I am going to just do that real quick. There we go. Okay, So I'm gonna continue erasing. And like I was saying, micron pens are archival ink, so they tend to dry pretty quick. But if you're not sure, just make sure your pen is really dry before you try and go over it with an eraser. Oftentimes, an eraser will also kind of dull the look of the ink, so if you feel like your eraser is dulling it too much, you can also go over it again afterwards. But there we go. Okay, like I said, it does kind of dull sometimes, so the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that thicker micron pen again and I'm gonna just go over the outline of my letter just to kind of make it a little bit more crisp. Some of these things are a little bit faded. If I was a perfectionist, I would go over those too. But if you've been following me for a while, you know I'm not a perfectionist. And the funny part about that is I inherit that not perfectionism from my dad. So I don't think that he would mind that I'm not being a perfectionist with his card. So anyway, the gist of this card is make the outline, find some icons you like, try and run the icons as close to the edge as possible so that they're touching. And if you have kind of a repeat icon like I did, like a golf ball, and you can use it to fill in the edges, one thing that actually could end up looking really cool is if you just filled the negative space with the icons and didn't do an outline, and you had enough icons to really make it nice and dense that it would actually show the letters DAD without having an outline around them. I find that looks really, really cool. And I actually have a card that looks like that for Mother's Day with florals. So if you want to try that out, you can check that too. But this is really the extent of the doodles on the card. The last thing I'm going to do, like I said, is cut it so that it's more centered in the card. There we have it. So I hope you found that straightforward and easy to follow. I know that it'll probably take you a lot longer in real life than it did in this tutorial, but it's a super fun way to just create something a little more meaningful for the dad in your life. If you're looking for a card like this for moms, like I mentioned, I have one that you can check out that is made just like this, but with florals, and it ends up looking super adorable as well. If you liked this video, I would love it if you would hit the thumbs up button, if you would follow. It means a lot to me to have all of you here on the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.